Liverpool fans, the transfer news just keeps getting bigger. Andoni Iraola could be handed a major new transfer priority, while PSG have dropped a huge update on Liverpool target Bradley Barcola. There's also a surprising Netherlands manager appointment, fresh developments involving Rio Ngumoa and Trey Nyoni, and a major update on Curtis Jones's future. Plus, we'll explain why Yan Diamonde may not have been the right signing for Liverpool and why Jurgen Klopp's past transfer warning could prove very important. So stay with us until the end, because there are some huge Liverpool developments you won't want to miss. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn on notifications and join the Liverpool news community. Liverpool news. Andoni Iraola set to be handed new transfer priority as double update emerges. Liverpool's stuttering summer transfer window could about to become even more complicated. Liverpool could be facing another transfer headache this summer. The window slams shut on September 1st, and the Reds are still scrambling to get a mega money deal over the line for PSG winger Bradley Barcola. Andoni Iraola's priority has been bolstering Liverpool's attack, namely securing a replacement for Mohamed Salah and supplementing their forward line as a whole. However, the Reds are now braced for interest in two of their own midfielders. The updates mean Liverpool's Basque head coach may now have to pivot his attentions to strengthening his engine room. This would no doubt be a monumental task, given that the Reds' hierarchy are still focusing their energies on the last third of the pitch. Alexis McAllister interest. Liverpool are braced for interest in Alexis McAllister this summer. Galatasaray have lodged their interest in recruiting the 27-year-old, according to reports in Turkey. That interest has so far been declared via intermediaries to determine a price and the Argentine's wage demands, according to Yeni Asir. However, that's not all. According to TalkSport, Manchester City have also shortlisted the World Cup winner as they look to replace Rodri, who could be on his way to Barcelona this summer. However, the report stresses that there's been no contact or developments on any deal to take the midfielder to Manchester. McAllister has been a regular in the Reds' midfield since his arrival from Brighton in 2023. However, he has now entered the final 2 years of his Anfield contract and suffered a dip in form last season, which saw him touted for an exit this summer. Should he leave, Iraola would have to refocus his energies on replacing the star, with the Reds currently relying on McAllister, Ryan Gravenberch and Dominic Szoboszlai as three of his senior midfielders. Harvey Elliott, Trey Nyoni, Wataru Endo and Stefan Bajcetic are also options, but all except Nyoni have also been linked with an exit this summer. Curtis Jones' latest. Sky Italia are also reporting that Curtis Jones is close to joining Inter Milan. Inter have moved closer to offloading midfielder Davide Fratesi to Lazio on loan, with the Rome club reportedly having reached a verbal agreement with the player, according to Fabrizio Romano. The journalist says an £850,000 loan fee with an £11 million option to buy is in place before formal steps are to follow. Once that deal is done, it's believed Inter will press ahead with a move for Jones. Inter have registered a strong interest in the midfielder and are willing to pay £30 million for the 25-year-old, who is in the final year of his contract at Anfield. It's believed the Reds are looking for around £35 million for the player. Jones's absence against Monaco in a pre-season friendly on Sunday raised eyebrows, but Iraola was keen to stress that it was due to a minor injury issue rather than transfer speculation. He said, "Curtis has trained every day, but yesterday, Saturday, he finished with some issues in the hip, but nothing big. It didn't make any sense to risk him." PSG chief drops transfer bombshell on Liverpool target Bradley Barcola. Liverpool are still keen to sign Bradley Barcola, and although Paris Saint-Germain's price tag is causing an issue, the French giants are officially open to selling him. Paris Saint-Germain chairman Nasser Al-Khelaifi has refused to rule out selling Bradley Barcola in a boost to Liverpool's chances of signing him. Barcola, 23, remains the Reds' top target in the final knockings of the summer transfer window. But negotiations have been at an impasse as PSG look to bank the maximum fee for the winger, who they value at an eye-watering £145 million, amid belity from Arsenal too. Barcola was an unused substitute as Luis Enrique's side beat Aston Villa 2-1 to win the UEFA Super Cup in Salzburg on Wednesday, having only returned to training following the World Cup earlier this week. Post-match, Al-Khelaifi was asked about the France international's future and couldn't give a definitive answer. "We're working calmly. We don't talk too much," Al-Khelaifi told Canal+. I can't say whether he will leave or not. Today, he is a PSG player. We'll see. The chairman's comments came after Enrique kept tight-lipped before the match. I don't know, and I don't want to speak about any player individually, the PSG boss stated, because it's always dangerous when you are asking something positive or negative about a player. I stay focused on my team. While the victory saw Barcola collect a fourth European medal in just over 3 years at PSG, the goals were scored by 2 players ahead of him in the pecking order. Kavica Kvaratskhelia gave the Champions League holders an early lead before Villa equalised prior to half-time through Brian Maggio's strike. Desiree Doué then restored PSG's advantage in the second half. How much should Liverpool pay for Bradley Barcola? Have your say in the comments section. Liverpool manager Andoni Iraola also hasn't spoken about Barcola, although his desire to sign a wide forward is no secret. We definitely need to sign a winger, Iraola stated last month. But there are other situations where we will have to analyse what the market gives you, what is the cost, how we also see the players we have. We have some tricky positions where we have injured players that we trust, but it is still not the ideal situation, so it will depend on a lot of things. Netherlands confirmed surprising manager appointment after Arne Slot's statement. The Dutch FA has appointed the next Netherlands head coach a few days after Arne Slot insisted that his next job, after being fired by Liverpool, would be in the club game. After Arne Slot confirmed that he intends to take a job in the club game next, rather than the Dutch national team role left vacant by Ronald Koeman, an alternative appointment has been made. Links with Roberto Martinez emerged earlier this week, but it is actually Xavi Hernandez, the Barcelona legend, who will take over. The ex-Spain midfielder is set to become the first foreigner to hold the post since the 1970s. Xavi, who has previously managed Al Sadd and Barcelona, has signed a contract until 2030, which will mean taking charge of the European Championship in 2028 and then the World Cup 2 years later, just like Jurgen Klopp with Germany. A few days ago, Slot clarified his intentions amid media speculation about him taking over following Koeman's post-World Cup exit. Over the past few weeks, and particularly the past few days, various reports have appeared regarding the vacancy at the Dutch national team, suggesting that I had withdrawn from the process after lengthy negotiations, including regarding salary and contract duration, Slot said. That speculation is incorrect. We simply never reached that stage of the talks. Slot did admit that he had held conversations with the Dutch FA, although the discussions were only brief. He added, "That is only logical when you are approached for an important position and want to get a better picture of the role and the expectations. At this stage of my career, I prefer to see myself on the training pitch with my players every day, something that is simply not possible in the same way with a national team. And that is why I chose not to continue the talks and not to start negotiations on what a possible contract might look like. I have enormous respect for the national team and for the KNVB and can only be positive about the professional manner in which the talks proceeded that week. For now, I believe that club football still has a lot to offer me." Slot was also linked with a move to the Saudi Pro League to replace Matthias Gisel, who joined Newcastle. However, there was no truth in any reports that he was interested in that role. Liverpool.com says, "Slot will need to choose his next job carefully. His stock is still high, but he didn't go to AC Milan when Ruben Amorim did, and was also linked with Fulham. It looks like he will have to go somewhere mid-season when someone is fired, which can be difficult. Rio Ngumoha and Trey Nioni can unlock huge Liverpool transfer advantage. Rio Ngumoha and Trey Nioni can unlock a huge Liverpool transfer advantage because of the homegrown rules, which will play a role in signings this summer and beyond. With Liverpool having signed Ronald Araujo and Andoni Iraola still in need of at least one more attacker, and ideally 2 this summer, there has been much discussion about homegrown quotas this week. In short, if Liverpool signs another non-homegrown player over the age of 21, for them to be included in the club's Premier League squad, someone else would have to drop out. Calvin Ramsey, who is currently included in the number, would be the obvious player to be removed from the list. Anyone 21 and under does not have to be registered, though that is not the case in Europe, where the rules are different. Until Giovanni Leoni got injured last year, for example, Federico Chiesa looked set to miss out in the Champions League because the young centre-back was selected ahead of him. For players like Ifeanyi Ndukwe, who don't qualify for a work permit, it is possible for Premier League and Championship clubs to have up to 4 so-called Elite Significant Contribution (ESC) places made available, but teams are not entitled to all 4 spots automatically. In order to get all 4, 35% of their minutes the previous year must have been played by homegrown players. The more you drop below that percentage, the fewer places you get, hence Liverpool only getting 1 spot this term, which has already been taken by 18-year-old Mortala Ndiaye after he arrived in January. Over the next few months, while both Ngumoha and Nioni will be managed carefully given their young age, their roles should grow. It remains to be seen whether or not Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones stay, but they could help too. The more minutes they play, the higher the percentage will be next time the equation is calculated. Looking to the longer term, Liverpool can help its case when it comes to the homegrown rules in other ways too, because if players represent their team for 3 successive seasons before the age of 21, they qualify as well. Stefan Bajcetic, despite not being from the UK, falls into that category after he came in from Celta Vigo in 2021. Ngumoha and Nioni will do too when they are old enough. In the future, Leone came in early enough from Parma to have 3 years before his 21st birthday, and Ibrahim Mbaye of PSG, who is being considered as a transfer option, is still only 18, so he could replicate that while not needing to be registered in this season's Premier League squad because he is under 21. In building a squad, there are plenty of considerations that need to be assessed and lots of moving parts. Next summer, the likes of Wataru Endo and Kostas Tsimikas, who are not homegrown, are likely to move on when their contracts expire. Luke Chambers, for instance, who would be homegrown, might be able to step up at left-back, but it is also why any suggestions that Liverpool should just sign anyone to bolster its roster and add depth in key areas are nonsense. Adding multiple non-homegrown players would have a knock-on impact in terms of who could be named in Premier League and Champions League squads once the new campaign kicks off. And crucially, adding a player for a short period is essentially impossible, aside from a loan, like Iraola. If a player is given a 3 or 4 year contract, for instance, they are permitted to stay for the entirety if they wish. Chiesa, for example, though he is unlikely to play much and has only started 2 Premier League games in 2 years at Anfield so far, has made clear that he wants to fight for his place under new head coach Iraola. He could take up a non-homegrown place in the meantime. Once a player is on a team's books, moving them on is not necessarily simple, and it all factors into who is targeted and at what point certain deals are most appealing. Liverpool transfer news as Bradley Barcola progress explained and Curtis Jones' exit unlocked. Liverpool transfer news and rumours latest, including updates on Bradley Barcola and a move from PSG, as well as a transfer move that could unlock Curtis Jones' exit. Liverpool is inching closer to the brand new Premier League season, with Andoni Iraola hopeful that it will be a positive campaign ahead for the Reds. The new head coach has had a mixed pre-season so far, with 2 wins and 2 defeats in the friendly matches, while there has been a mixture of senior stars and academy prospects in the team. On the transfer front, it's been relatively quiet for Liverpool, with 3 arrivals so far this summer to help bolster the team, with a few others in the pipeline. Work is underway for further signings, with a busier end to the transfer market expected, while there could also be some exits on the cards. So with that said, here's a look at the latest Liverpool transfer news and rumours ahead of another busy day of action for the Reds. Bradley Barcola, PSG. Bradley Barcola's move to Liverpool is making little progress according to Team Talk, but talks remain between the Reds and Paris Saint-Germain over a deal for the winger. It's claimed that the French club is holding to a valuation of $196 million for its star, which is proving to be a stumbling block for the Merseyside outfit at this stage. The report adds that Liverpool can feasibly break its own record to pay that fee, but Barcola is valued below that price by the club at the moment. While the deal is not off, club-to-club discussions have not progressed, and other teams are still looking at a possible deal. Liverpool.com says, considering the valuation set by PSG, it was always going to be clear that Liverpool faces a waiting game to get a deal for Barcola over the line. With the Reds in desperate need of signing a forward, it would be easy to cave in, especially with the pressure of other clubs joining the race. However, it's clear that PSG's latest moves have been with an exit in mind, so a deal is still very possible, and there is likely no need to panic. Curtis Jones, Liverpool, and Davide Fratesi, Inter Milan. Another move that is taking some time to materialise is an exit for Curtis Jones. The midfielder continues to be linked with a switch to Inter Milan as he enters the final year of his contract at Liverpool. After having an offer rejected, the Reds have stuck by their valuation of the midfielder, which means some deals need to go ahead for Inter to invest in the star. Gazzetta dello Sport reports that Davide Fratesi is one of those who would have to move on for Jones to make his move to Inter Milan in the coming weeks. That exit is underway, as Fabrizio Romano claims that the Italian international is set to join Lazio on a season-long loan with a potential permanent move at the end of it. Some formal steps are set to follow before a deal is confirmed, but it could unlock Jones and his switch to the San Siro. Liverpool.com says, an exit for Jones has seemed likely all summer, but with these other moves coming about, it appears to finally put the wheels in motion for a move. It's a deal that makes sense for all parties, with Liverpool needing the funds and the space to bring through Trey Nioni, while the player will want more guaranteed playing time, and Inter Milan are looking for a quality midfield option. It remains to be seen what fee the Reds will eventually land, but it will all be handy towards other deals before the transfer window closes. Yan Diomande wasn't right for Liverpool, and Jurgen Klopp transfer warning proves why. Yan Diomande completed a £120 million move to Real Madrid after snubbing Liverpool earlier in the transfer window. It has been a curious couple of years for Liverpool when it comes to managing expectations since Jurgen Klopp stepped down as manager in the summer of 2024. After a trophy-laden 9 years under the German, many anticipated a drop-off following his departure, having seen similar struggles at Manchester United and Arsenal post Sir Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger. With Arne Slot named as Klopp's successor, the Reds fan base could be forgiven for expecting a transitional campaign in 2023/24. Instead, they won the Premier League at a canter. Consequently, expectations were sky high in the summer of 2025 and only enhanced by a £450 million spending spree from the reigning champions, as Liverpool twice broke their transfer record. But rather than being stronger than ever, the Reds badly floundered as they finished fifth in the table. Limping across the finish line after a season that went from bad to worse on the pitch, they narrowly secured Champions League qualification on the final day of the season. But that was only because England were granted one of the 2 European performance spots awarded to the 2 associations with the highest UEFA coefficient points. With Slot losing his job as a result of such struggles, there is another new man in the Anfield dugout in Andoni Iraola. And, understandably, this time another transitional campaign is expected. Having won 2 and lost 2 of their pre-season friendlies so far, throwing away 2-goal leads in both defeats, Iraola's Reds are very much an early work in progress. The Spaniard is already without Hugo Ekitike, Conor Bradley and Giovanni Leone to long-term injury, while Liverpool waved off Mohamed Salah, Andy Robertson and Ibrahima Konate on free transfers earlier this summer. The Reds have at least signed Jeremy Jacquet and Ronald Araujo to bolster their defensive options and brought in Victor Munoz from Osasuna. But it is clear that more recruitment is required to strengthen Iraola's squad. Enhancing Liverpool's attack remains the priority, with the Reds remaining in talks with Paris Saint-Germain over a move for Bradley Barcola. In a dream transfer window, the France international would not only sign, but also not be the only new addition at Anfield in the forthcoming weeks. Liverpool have already had to concede defeat on at least one transfer target, though, after Yan Diomande signed for Real Madrid in a deal worth up to £120 million earlier this month. The Reds had seemingly led the chase for the Ivorian earlier this summer and were willing to pay £86 million to land his signature. Such a fee ultimately fell short of RB Leipzig's demands. But before Liverpool could return with an improved offer, it emerged that Diomande had decided he favoured a move to Paris Saint-Germain over Anfield. The Athletic reported that he came to such a decision because it was felt that the Reds would be in transition over the coming season, and he instead wanted to help PSG try and win a 3rd straight Champions League title and even challenge for the Ballon d'Or. PSG ultimately withdrew from the race to sign Diomande at the end of July, following Real Madrid's own emergence, having been reluctant to meet the forward salary demands and RB Leipzig's asking price. By then, Liverpool were long out of the conversation and switched their attention elsewhere, as the Reds instead stepped up their interest in Barcola. Having held preliminary talks with the France international's representatives, they were given encouraging signs from the players' camp that he was open to a move to Anfield. And that is despite the possibility of a transitional campaign looming. It is perhaps at this point worth reminding ourselves of one of Klopp's most memorable quotes from his early time in charge of Liverpool, as the Reds faced up to the likely possibility of missing out on Champions League football. If I would speak to a player now and he would tell me, if you were playing in the Champions League next year, I would be really interested, I would put the phone down from my side, he said in April 2016. I am not interested. I always tell players, if when you are 35 or 36 and look back on your career and you think about the 1 year when you didn't play Champions League, then you are really a poor boy. There are so many things you can do and reach if you go together with the team. You can qualify for the Champions League, play Champions League, maybe win it or whatever. It is a much more satisfying thing than all the rest. That is what I would say. It is pushing the train, not jumping on the running train. That is what we need here. If somebody says, no, you don't play Champions League next year, then goodbye and thank you. Have fun next year wherever you will be. We will find players, or we have players already that will go our way. That is not my way. That is the normal way for a club not playing in the Champions League. Pushing the train rather than jumping on the running train was a belief he would repeat more than once in the forthcoming years, as Klopp's Liverpool side went on to win every major honour. This is a very, very special club, Klopp said ahead of his departure in the summer of 2024. I didn't make them believe. I reminded them that it helps when you believe. That's what I think. Everybody was ready to push the train, and that's what we did for 8.5 years. That attitude is something the Reds now need to rediscover. They are not starting from as far back as when the German first took over, but it is hard to decipher where exactly they fall in the Premier League pecking order as things stand. Defending champions Arsenal are rightful title favourites, but there has been so much change around the majority of the English top flight, with fellow Big Six clubs Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur all boasting new permanent head coaches.